Her lips were blue. Her skin was white as the snow, burying her alive. Victoria Reyes had survived 3 years of undercover operations. She had infiltrated cartels, faced killers, stared down men who traded human beings like cattle. But tonight, drugged and dumped in a Montana blizzard, she was dying, and no one was coming. No one except a broken Navy SEAL who couldn't sleep and a German shepherd who refused to let him ignore what his nose was telling him. Shadow found her first. Nathan Cole carried her 3 miles through the worst storm in a decade. And that's when the real nightmare began. Before we continue, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far the story reaches. And please, hit subscribe and stay with us until the very end. This story will change how you see courage. Now, let's go back to the beginning. 3 months of lies. That's what Victoria Reyes had given to this mission. 3 months of smiling at monsters. 3 months of pretending to be someone she wasn't. 3 months of watching evil operate in plain sight while wearing a mask so perfect, even she sometimes forgot who she really was. Tonight was supposed to end it. She stood in the bathroom of Silver Point Resort's grand ballroom, gripping the marble sink, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her wore a deep red evening gown, hair swept up in an elegant twist, makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged here, among the wealthy, the powerful, the untouchable. She didn't. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. 3 more hours, then it's over. The panic device was taped beneath her dress, pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. Her handler was waiting at a safe house in Kalispell, 40 miles down the mountain. The extraction plan was simple. Leave through the service entrance at midnight. Drive the rental car to the rendezvous. Hand over the evidence that would bring down Alexander Mercer's empire. Simple. Except nothing about this operation had ever been simple. Tori took one last breath, adjusted her mask of confidence, and walked back into the ballroom. The New Year's gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over 300 guests. Politicians, celebrities, business executives. The kind of people who measured their worth in zeros. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed. The orchestra played something elegant and forgettable. And in the center of it all stood Alexander Mercer. 52 years old. Silver hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. Wearing a tuxedo that cost more than most people earned in a year. He was shaking hands, accepting compliments, radiating the easy charm of a man who had never heard the word no. To the world, Alexander Mercer was a philanthropist, a visionary, a man who built luxury resorts and donated millions to children's hospitals. To Tori, he was a trafficker. A monster. A man who used his remote mountain properties as transit points for human cargo. Young women who disappeared into a network so sophisticated that even the FBI had struggled for years to penetrate it. Until Tori. She had spent 3 months as his event coordinator, earning his trust, learning his patterns, documenting everything. She had photographs of the tunnels beneath the resort, financial records showing payments to shell companies, testimony from a housekeeper who had seen too much and trusted Tori enough to whisper the truth. Tonight, she was taking it all to people who could use it. Tonight, Alexander Mercer's empire would begin to fall. If she could just make it to midnight. Tori circulated through the crowd, playing her role, smiling at guests, checking on catering staff, being invisible in the way that staff always was. She had learned that lesson early. People like Mercer never really saw the people who served them. They were furniture, background, forgettable. It was the perfect cover. "Victoria!" The voice came from behind her, smooth, pleasant, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. She turned. "Mr. Mercer." Alexander Mercer stood 3 feet away, champagne flute in hand, silver eyes studying her with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. "Wonderful event," he said. "You've outdone yourself."
"Thank you, sir. I hope the guests are enjoying themselves."
"They are. They always do." He tilted his head slightly. "You look different tonight."
"Different, sir?"
"More confident. Like someone who has made a decision." Tori's heart rate spiked. She kept her face neutral. "I suppose I'm just happy the planning is over. Events like this are stressful." "Yes." Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Stress does strange things to people. Makes them careless. Makes them forget who's watching." He raised his glass in a mock toast, then walked away. Tori stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. He knows. The thought crashed through her like ice water. He knows something. She moved. Not fast. Fast would draw attention, but purposefully, toward the service corridor, toward the kitchen, toward the loading dock where her rental car waited. She made it 20 feet before Marcus Webb appeared. Mercer's head of security was impossible to miss. 6'4", shaved head, body built like a weapon. He had the dead eyes of a man who had done things that most people couldn't imagine. "Ms. Reyes." His voice was flat. "Mr. Mercer would like a word."
"I was just checking on the kitchen."
He'd like a word now. 2 more men materialized behind her, both large, both silent, both positioned to cut off her only escape route. Tori's training screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she was outnumbered, outmuscled, surrounded by 300 witnesses who wouldn't understand what they were seeing. "Of course," she said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest.
"Lead the way."
Webb smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "After you." They escorted her through the service corridor, away from the ballroom, away from the music and laughter, away from everything that felt like safety. The office they brought her to was on the 3rd floor, private, soundproofed. The kind of room where conversations happened that no one was supposed to hear. Alexander Mercer was waiting. He sat behind his desk, still in his tuxedo. Champagne traded for whiskey. His expression had changed. The charming philanthropist was gone, replaced by something colder. Something real. "Close the door, Marcus." The door closed. The lock clicked. "Please, Victoria, sit." "I prefer to stand."
"That wasn't a request."
Webb's hand closed on her shoulder, pushing her into the chair with enough force to make the point clear. Mercer studied her for a long moment. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. 3 months, he said finally.
"That's how long you've been with us. 3 months of excellent work. Impeccable attention to detail. The kind of employee any business owner would be grateful for."
Tori said nothing. "And yet," Mercer opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. "I received some interesting information yesterday. From a friend in Washington. Someone who keeps track of unusual personnel movements." He slid a photograph across the desk. Tori's blood froze. It was her, but not as Victoria Reyes, event coordinator. As Special Agent Victoria Reyes, FBI. The photo was from her official credentials, the ones she hadn't seen in 3 months, the ones that were supposed to be locked in a secure facility. "You have nothing to say?" "That's not me." "Isn't it?" Mercer leaned back. "The resemblance is remarkable. Same face, same eyes, same scar on the left wrist, from what I'm told was a childhood accident." Tori's hand twitched involuntarily toward her wrist. The scar was hidden by her dress, but it was there. Had been there since she was 8 years old and fell through a glass door. "My friend tells me that Special Agent Reyes specializes in human trafficking cases, that she's been trying to infiltrate my organization for 2 years." Mercer's voice hardened. That she's very, very good at pretending to be someone she's not. Mr. Mercer, I don't know what you've been told, but don't. The word cracked like a whip.
Don't insult my intelligence. I've survived 30 years in business by knowing when people are lying to me. And you, Victoria, or whatever your real name is, have been lying to me since the day you walked through my door. Tori made her decision in a fraction of a second. She lunged for the panic device under her dress. Webb was faster. He caught her wrist, twisted, and wrenched her arm behind her back with practiced efficiency. Pain exploded through her shoulder. The device won't help you, Mercer said calmly. We've been jamming signals within the resort for hours. Your handler in Kalispell has no idea anything is wrong. They'll come looking for me. Eventually. By then, you'll be a tragic accident. A young woman who drank too much at a party and wandered into a blizzard. Mercer stood. It happens more often than you'd think in these mountains. You can't. I can. I have. I will. He walked around the desk, stopping inches from her face. The question is, what you know, who you've told, and how much damage control I need to do. I haven't told anyone anything. Marcus? Webb's grip tightened. Something sharp pressed against Tori's neck. A needle, she realized. A syringe. Last chance, Mercer said. What did you find? Nothing. I found nothing. Disappointing. Mercer nodded to Webb. Make sure she tells you everything. Then, take care of the problem. The needle pierced her skin. The world tilted. Tori fought. She drove her heel into Webb's instep, threw her head back into his face, heard something crunch. His grip loosened, just for a second, and she tore free. She ran. Through the door, down the hallway, crashing through a fire exit, alarm screaming behind her. The cold hit her like a wall. She was outside, in the loading dock, in the blizzard that had been building all night. Snow swirled so thick she could barely see 5 feet ahead. Her legs were already going numb, the drug working faster than she'd hoped. Her head swam, her vision blurred. She stumbled toward where she thought the parking lot was, toward her car, toward escape. But the drug was winning. Inch by inch, it was winning. Tori fell. Her knees hit the snow, then her hands, then her face. The cold was so absolute that it almost felt like warmth, like the universe wrapping her in a blanket and whispering that it was okay to sleep. She heard voices behind her, shouts, the sound of engines starting. They were coming. She tried to get up. Her body refused. This is how I die, she thought. In a parking lot. In a blizzard. And no one will ever know the truth. Hands grabbed her. Rough. Efficient. She was being lifted, carried, thrown into the back of something metal that smelled like oil and cold air. A van. They were putting her in a van. She tried to fight, managed to claw at a face, to bite a hand. Someone swore. Someone hit her. Then the doors slammed shut and the van started moving. The last thing she heard before the darkness took her was Webb's voice, flat and businesslike. Find somewhere quiet. Make sure she disappears. 3 miles away, Nathan Cole was having the same nightmare he had every night. Jackson's face. The blood. The moment when everything went wrong. They were in Syria again, in a building that was supposed to be empty, extracting a target that was supposed to be low risk. Supposed to be. The words that got people killed. The explosion came without warning. 1 second, Nathan was moving through a doorway. The next second, the world was fire and shrapnel and screaming. Jackson was behind him. Had been behind him. Until the wall collapsed. Nathan could still feel the rubble under his hands as he dug.
Still hear his own voice screaming Jackson's name. Still see the moment when he finally reached his teammate and realized it was too late. 2 seconds. That's how long it had taken for Nathan's world to change. 2 seconds too late. He woke, gasping, sweat-soaked despite the cold cabin air. Shadow was already there. The German shepherd had moved from his bed to Nathan's side, pressing his warm body against his human's legs, amber eyes steady and concerned. "I'm okay, boy." Nathan's voice was raw. "Just a dream." Shadow's expression suggested he didn't believe that for a second. Nathan sat up, ran his hands through his short dark brown hair, tried to slow his pounding heart. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. Outside, the blizzard howled against the cabin walls, like something alive and angry. He wasn't going back to sleep. He knew that. The nightmare never let him sleep twice in one night. "Walk?" he asked Shadow. The dog's ears perked up immediately. "Yeah, I thought so." Nathan pulled on his Navy uniform, the NWU Type 3 he'd been wearing when he walked into the cabin 3 weeks ago, and hadn't bothered to change. The green and brown camouflage felt like armor, like the last piece of who he used to be. His shoulder ached where the bullet had grazed him in Syria. The doctors said it would heal. They hadn't mentioned anything about his mind. "Come on, boy." They stepped into the storm. The cold was immediate and brutal, the kind of cold that hurt to breathe, that turned exposed skin to ice. Nathan welcomed it. The pain was clean, simple, something he could feel without having to think. Shadow moved beside him, seemingly unbothered by the wind. The dog had served 3 tours with Nathan, had been shot at, bombed, nearly killed a dozen times. A Montana blizzard was nothing compared to what they'd survived together. They walked. Nathan didn't have a destination. He never did on these nights. He just moved, one foot in front of the other, letting the physical exhaustion battle the mental demons. His father's cabin sat at the edge of the national forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. Nathan had chosen the isolation deliberately. After Syria, after Jackson, he couldn't face people, couldn't face the questions, the sympathy, the way everyone looked at him like he was broken. He was broken. But out here, alone with Shadow and the mountains and the silence, he could pretend that being broken was enough. That he didn't have to be whole. That he could just exist. The blizzard intensified. Nathan should have turned back. But Shadow stopped. The dog went rigid, every muscle tensed, ears forward, nose working furiously against the wind. Nathan recognized that posture. It was the same way Shadow had stood in Afghanistan when he detected explosives. The same way he had stood in Syria when he found survivors in the rubble. The way he stood when something was very, very wrong. "What is it, boy?" Shadow whined. Not a fearful sound, an urgent one. His body was oriented northeast, toward something Nathan couldn't see through the swirling white. "There's nothing out there. We're in the middle of nowhere." Shadow barked once, sharp, insistent. Then he started moving. "Shadow! Shadow!" The dog didn't listen. He was already pushing through the deep snow, limping slightly on his old injury but refusing to slow down. Nathan had 2 choices: follow or let his dog disappear into a blizzard alone. It wasn't really a choice at all. He ran. Shadow led him through the trees, through drifts that came up to Nathan's knees, through wind so fierce he had to shield his face with his arm. The cold was winning. He could feel it seeping through his uniform, numbing his fingers, stealing his strength. But Shadow kept going, and Nathan kept following. 20 minutes. 30. Each step harder than the last. Then Shadow stopped. Nathan stumbled up beside him, breathing hard, ice forming on his eyebrows and the stubble on his chin. They were at the edge of a ravine. Below them,
half buried in snow, was Jesus. A woman. She was wearing an evening dress, deep red, completely wrong for the conditions. Her dark hair was scattered across the snow. Her eyes were closed. Her skin was white as porcelain. She wasn't moving. Nathan half slid, half fell down the ravine slope, Shadow scrambling beside him. He reached her, checked her pulse. Faint, barely there, but present. "She's alive," he breathed. "Shadow, she's alive." He checked for injuries. Found bruises on her arms, defensive wounds, the kind you got when someone grabbed you and you fought back. Found a puncture mark on her neck, injection site, probably sedative. Found signs of a struggle that told him this woman hadn't wandered into the blizzard by accident. Someone had dumped her here to die. "Stay with me," Nathan said, stripping off his jacket and wrapping it around her. "You hear me? Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered. For a moment, they opened, dark brown, glazed with cold and drugs, but alive with something that looked like fight. "Who?" she whispered. "My name is Nathan. I'm going to get you out of here." They'll come back." "Nobody's coming back. Not tonight. Not in this storm." He lifted her. She weighed almost nothing. Or maybe his training had taught him to carry heavy things until they felt like nothing. 3 miles back to the cabin, in a blizzard, with hypothermia setting in, and God knew what drugs in her system. It should have been impossible. Nathan Cole didn't believe in impossible anymore. He'd seen too many impossible things. "Stay with me," he said again, more to himself than to her. "Just stay with me." Shadow pressed against his legs, sharing warmth, helping guide. And together, they walked into the storm. The woman drifted in and out. Sometimes she was silent, her body limp, her breathing so shallow Nathan had to stop and check that she was still alive. Sometimes she mumbled, names he didn't recognize, fragments of conversations. Mercer came up again and again. Evidence. Tunnels. Girls. Nathan filed every word away. He didn't understand yet, but he would. Something terrible had happened to this woman, and whoever was responsible was going to pay. That was a promise. The cabin appeared through the snow like a mirage. Nathan had never been so grateful to see 4 walls and a roof. He kicked open the door. He'd stopped locking it months ago because what was the point? And carried the woman inside. The fire had burned down to embers. He laid her on the couch, then moved faster than he'd moved since Syria, building the flames back up, grabbing blankets, checking her temperature. Cold. Too cold. But not beyond hope. "Come on," he murmured, wrapping her in everything warm he could find. "Fight. Whatever happened to you, you fought this far. Don't stop now." Shadow jumped onto the couch, pressing his body against hers, sharing the warmth that came naturally to his thick coat. Nathan worked. He stripped off her wet dress, clinical, professional, nothing but survival, and replaced it with his own dry clothes. He heated water on the stove, prepared warm compresses, did everything his combat medic training had taught him about treating hypothermia. And slowly, over the next hour, color began returning to her cheeks. Her breathing deepened. Her eyes opened. "Where?" Her voice was hoarse, confused. "My cabin, about 3 miles from where my dog found you." She tried to sit up, groaned, fell back. "Easy. You've got moderate hypothermia and what looks like ketamine in your system. Moving fast will make both worse." Her eyes focused on him, on his uniform, on Shadow still pressed against her side. "Navy?" "SEAL, currently on leave." "Your dog?" "Shadow. He found you. I just carried you."
She was quiet for a moment, processing. Nathan could see her mind working behind those dark eyes, cataloging information, assessing the situation, determining threat levels. "You're military trained," he said. "The way you're looking at me, checking exits, calculating odds." "Something like that." "Want to tell me who left you to die in a blizzard?" "No." "Want to tell me why?" Also no. Nathan almost smiled. Whoever this woman was, she had spine. "Fair enough. But I'm going to need something. You were mumbling about someone named Mercer, about evidence, about girls." He leaned forward. 3 miles from here is Silver Point Resort, Alexander Mercer's flagship property, and right now, you're wearing my dead teammate's sweatshirt because you almost froze to death. So I think I've earned at least a name. She studied him for a long moment. "Victoria," she said finally. "Victoria Reyes." "That your real name?" "It's the name on my FBI credentials. Whether that makes it real is a philosophical question." Nathan's eyebrows rose. "FBI?" "Undercover. 3 months. Mercer's trafficking operation." She closed her eyes. "I got made tonight. They drugged me."
Dumped me. A bitter laugh. Thought they'd let the weather finish what they started. Trafficking? Young women. Foreign nationals. He uses his resorts as transit points. Victoria's voice hardened. "I had everything. Evidence, testimony, enough to bring him down, and now it's still at the resort, along with the 3 women he's holding in the basement tunnels." Nathan felt something shift inside him. Something that had been dormant since Syria. Something that felt dangerously like purpose. "Can you contact your handler?" "Not from here. No cell service. Landlines are down." "I have a satellite phone." Victoria's eyes opened. "You're kidding." "Emergency equipment. Comes with the territory when you live this far from civilization." Nathan stood. "But here's the thing, Agent Reyes. The moment you make that call, people will come. And whoever sent you into that blizzard will know you survived." "I'm aware." "Are you also aware that they'll probably send people to finish the job?" "Yes." "And that my cabin is the only structure within 10 miles, which makes it the obvious place to look?" "I am now." Nathan walked to a cabinet in the corner of the room, opened it. Inside was an arsenal that would have made most police departments jealous. Rifles, handguns, ammunition, tactical equipment. "I'm not asking you to fight my battles," Victoria said quietly. "You're not asking." Nathan pulled out a rifle, checked the magazine, set it aside. "But I'm offering." "Why?" It was a simple question, but the answer wasn't simple at all. Nathan thought about Jackson, about Syria, about the 2 seconds that had haunted him every night for 3 months, about the voices that whispered that he should have been faster, should have been better, should have been able to save his teammate. He thought about the woman on his couch, a woman who had gone undercover to save strangers, who had almost died for her mission, who was still more concerned about the victims than herself. "Because I spent 3 months trying to figure out why I'm still alive when a better man than me is dead," he said finally. "And maybe this is why. Maybe God or the universe or dumb luck put me exactly where I needed to be to find you." He met her eyes. "I'm not going to waste that." Victoria held his gaze for a long moment. Then she reached out her hand. "Give me the satellite phone." Nathan gave it to her. She dialed. And somewhere in the storm, everything began to change. The call was brief. "Reyes, yes, I'm alive. No, I can't explain now. Listen to me. Mercer knows. He made me tonight. I need extraction, but I also need a tactical team. There are victims at the resort. 3, maybe more. Basement level. Access through the tunnels." She paused.
I understand. How long? She listened. Her face fell. 24 hours? The storm, yes, I understand. Do what you can. She ended the call. 24 hours, Nathan said. Minimum. The blizzard has the regional airports closed. They're scrambling a team from Seattle, but the roads are impassable. Victoria's jaw tightened. Mercer will know by morning that I didn't freeze. He'll either run or come looking for you. Yes. Nathan looked at Shadow. The dog looked back at him with steady amber eyes. Then I guess we'd better be ready. You don't owe me anything. You're right, I don't. Nathan picked up the rifle. But I've got nothing else to do tonight, and my dog seems to like you. Shadow's tail wagged once, as if in confirmation. Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. You're not what I expected from a seal. What did you expect? More muscles, less talking. I've got both. I just choose my moments. He handed her a handgun. She checked it automatically. Magazine, chamber, safety, with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. So what's the plan? She asked. Nathan looked out the window at the storm still raging against the night. We survive until morning. Then we go on offense. Offense against Alexander Mercer? Offense against anyone who tries to hurt you again. Victoria studied him. The broken seal in his dead teammate's cabin, haunted by ghosts she could only imagine. The German shepherd pressed against her side, giving warmth without asking for anything in return. She had spent 3 months surrounded by evil. Tonight, she had been thrown into a blizzard to die. And somehow, against all odds, she had landed exactly where she needed to be. Thank you, she said quietly, for finding me. Thank Shadow. Nathan moved toward the window, rifle ready. He's the one who wouldn't let me walk past. The storm howled, the fire crackled, and somewhere in the darkness, men with guns were preparing to finish what they had started. They had no idea what was waiting for them. They came at dawn. Shadow's growl was the only warning, a low, rumbling sound that started deep in his chest and built until Nathan could feel it vibrating through the floorboards. How many? Victoria asked, already moving toward the window. Nathan didn't answer. He was watching Shadow. The dog's ears were rotating, tracking sounds no human could hear. His body was oriented toward the east, then shifted slightly south. Multiple approaches, Nathan said. They're trying to flank us. Professional? Professional enough to know better than to come in a straight line. Victoria checked her weapon. The hypothermia had faded during the night, replaced by a cold clarity that Nathan recognized. The calm before combat. The moment when fear became fuel. How many rounds do you have? Enough. Nathan moved to the back window. Through the gray morning light, he could see shapes moving through the trees. Question is whether we want to use them. What do you mean? I mean, killing Mercer's men makes this a murder investigation instead of a rescue operation. You said you have evidence. You said there are victims still at the resort. He met her eyes. Dead bodies complicate things. So what do you suggest? I suggest we make this very uncomfortable for them without leaving corpses. Shadow's growl intensified. The shapes were getting closer. Nathan opened a cabinet and pulled out a box. Victoria's eyebrows rose when she saw the contents. Are those? Flashbangs, smoke grenades, non-lethal deterrents. He handed her 2. Courtesy of a friend who doesn't ask questions. You keep military-grade equipment in a cabin in Montana? I keep a lot of things in this cabin. Most of them are coping mechanisms. Nathan moved toward the door. You take the back, I'll take the front. Shadow stays with you. I don't need a babysitter. He's not a babysitter. He's an early warning system. Nathan paused. Also, he's the only one here I trust completely. If he tells you to move, move. Victoria looked at Shadow. The dog looked back with amber eyes, that held an intelligence she found almost unsettling. "Fine. When I give the signal, throw the smoke and get to the tree line. I'll draw their attention." "That's a terrible plan." "It's the only plan we have time for." A shout from outside. Someone had spotted the cabin. "Now or never," Nathan said. Victoria nodded once, moved toward the back door. Shadow followed, his limp barely noticeable despite the cold. Nathan opened the front door. 3 men were approaching from the east, moving in formation, weapons drawn. Professional, just as he'd suspected. Not amateurs, not local muscle. These were trained operators, the kind of men that billionaires kept on retainer for problems that couldn't be solved with money. "Morning," Nathan called out. "You boys look lost." The lead man stopped. He was big, 6'2", maybe more, with the hard face of someone who had seen combat and enjoyed it. "We're looking for a woman," the man said. "She wandered off from the resort last night, got lost in the storm." "That's so. She might be confused, disoriented. If she found her way here, nobody's been here but me and my dog." Nathan leaned against the doorframe, projecting a casual confidence he didn't quite feel. "But I'll keep an eye out." The man's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look inside? Just to be sure?" "Yeah, I mind." "Sir, we're just trying to help a lost woman, and I'm just trying to drink my coffee in peace." Nathan's voice hardened. "You're on private property. You've stated your business. Now you can leave." The 3 men exchanged glances. Nathan could see the calculation happening. The assessment of risk versus reward. The question of whether this stranger in a military uniform was a threat or an obstacle. The lead man made his decision. "Check the back." One of the men peeled off, moving around the cabin. Nathan's hand moved toward the flashbang concealed at his hip. "I wouldn't do that," the lead man said, raising his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake would be letting you interfere with Mr. Mercer's business." "Mr. Mercer's business includes dumping women in blizzards to die?" The man's expression flickered, just for a second, just enough for Nathan to know he had struck a nerve. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." A shout from behind the cabin, then a scream, then a gunshot. Nathan moved. The flashbang left his hand before the lead man could react. The explosion of light and sound was disorienting, even to Nathan, who had closed his eyes and turned away. To the men who weren't expecting it, it was devastating. Nathan was on the lead man before his vision cleared. A strike to the throat, a knee to the groin, a twist that sent the weapon flying and left the man gasping on the frozen ground. The second man recovered faster, training kicking in through the confusion. He raised his weapon. Nathan dove. The shot went wide. Nathan came up with the lead man's fallen weapon, firing twice, not to kill, but to suppress. The bullets hit the tree behind the second man, close enough to make him flinch, close enough to buy Nathan the seconds he needed. He was on the man before he could reorient. Another strike, another twist, another body on the ground. 2 down, 1 unaccounted for. Nathan ran toward the back of the cabin. What he found made his blood freeze. Victoria was standing over the third man, her borrowed handgun pointed at his head. The man was on his knees, clutching his arm where Shadow's teeth had found purchase. But that wasn't what made Nathan stop. It was Shadow. The dog was lying in the snow, not moving, a red stain spreading beneath him. "He shot Shadow," Victoria said. Her voice was flat, controlled. The voice of someone holding themselves together by sheer force of will. "Then Shadow took him down anyway." Nathan was at his dog's side in an instant. "Shadow, Shadow boy, look at me." The German shepherd's eyes opened. Amber, still bright, still aware. His tail twitched, a weak wag, but a wag nonetheless. "He's alive." Nathan's hands moved over the dog's body, finding the wound. Shoulder, missed the chest, missed the spine. He looked up at Victoria. He's going to be okay. You sure? I've patched worse on the battlefield. Nathan's voice caught.
He's too stubborn to die from a flesh wound. Shadow whined softly, as if agreeing. Nathan turned to the man on his knees. His eyes had gone cold, the cold that men who had seen war recognized as the most dangerous state of all. You shot my dog. He attacked me. You came to my home. You threatened me. You shot my dog. Nathan stepped closer. Give me one reason I shouldn't leave you out here for the wolves. Mr. Mercer sent you to kill a federal agent. Mr. Mercer is going to prison. And you, Nathan crouched down, bringing his face level with the man's. You're going to tell me everything I want to know. I don't know anything. Wrong answer. Nathan's hand closed around the wound on the man's arm. The man screamed. Nathan! Victoria's voice was sharp. Nathan, stop! He stopped, but he didn't let go. How many more are coming? I don't know, Nathan squeezed. 4 more. Webb is bringing them from the resort. When? Soon. They were supposed to wait for our signal. The man's face was gray with pain. They know something's wrong by now. They'll be on their way. Nathan released him, stood up. Zip ties, in the cabin, kitchen drawer. Victoria retrieved them, while Nathan tended to Shadow. The wound was ugly, but not fatal. The bullet had passed through the muscle of the shoulder, without hitting bone or artery. Nathan cleaned it with supplies from his first aid kit, applied pressure, wrapped it tight. Shadow bore it all with the stoic patience of a dog who had been through worse. Good boy, Nathan murmured. You saved your life. Again. Shadow's tail thumped weakly. They secured the 3 men to trees at the edge of the clearing. Not comfortable, but not deadly. They'd survive until someone found them. We can't stay here, Victoria said. No. The resort? 2 defended. We don't know the layout. Don't know how many men Mercer has left. Nathan thought. But you said there are tunnels. Mining tunnels. They connect the resort to an old facility about 2 miles east. That's where he moves the victims. Can we access them from outside? Maybe. There's an entrance near an abandoned mine shaft. I never got close enough to confirm, but the map suggested... Good enough. Nathan lifted Shadow carefully. The dog whimpered, but didn't struggle. We go in through the back door while Mercer's men are looking for us at the front. That's insane. It's tactical. It's the same thing. Nathan almost smiled. You're starting to understand military thinking. They moved through the forest as the storm finally began to break. Nathan carried Shadow the first mile, until the dog insisted, through whines and struggles, on walking himself. He limped badly, favoring his injured shoulder, but his amber eyes were alert, and his nose was working constantly. Victoria walked beside them, weapon ready, watching every shadow. Tell me about Mercer, Nathan said. What do you want to know? Everything. How he operates, who protects him, why he thinks he can get away with this. Victoria was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Alexander Mercer is 4th-generation wealth. His family made their money in mining, then real estate, then hospitality. The resorts are just the public face. Luxury destinations for the wealthy, sustainable business practices, millions in charitable donations. But behind all that, he runs one of the most sophisticated trafficking networks in the northern United States. Young women, mostly. Foreign nationals on work visas that his company sponsors. They come here thinking they're getting legitimate jobs, and then, her voice hardened, they disappear. Into the tunnels. Into the tunnels. Into private jets. Into the hands of men who pay 6 figures for the privilege of owning another human being.
Nathan felt his stomach turn. And no one's ever stopped him? People have tried. Journalists who got too close to the truth, investigators who asked the wrong questions. They all had accidents or scandals or sudden career changes. Victoria's jaw tightened. Mercer doesn't just have money. He has connections, politicians, judges, police chiefs. The kind of network that makes evidence disappear and witnesses change their minds. But you got inside. I got inside because he was careless. His usual event coordinator got pregnant, took medical leave.
I had a cover that held up, references that checked out, timing that worked.
She shook her head. 3 months of watching monsters smile at each other over champagne. 3 months of pretending I didn't know what was happening in the basement. The women down there. 3 that I confirmed, maybe more. They're being held until transport can be arranged. Mercer doesn't keep them long. Too risky. A few days, a week at most, then they're moved. Moved where? Canada, usually, then overseas. By the time anyone realizes they're missing, they're on the other side of the world. Nathan processed this, the scope of it, the casual evil of a man who smiled for cameras while selling human beings. Your handler said 24 hours for backup. Minimum. The women don't have 24 hours. I know. Nathan stopped walking, turned to face her. Then we don't wait.
You're talking about assaulting a defended position with a wounded dog and an FBI agent who almost froze to death 12 hours ago.
I'm talking about saving 3 women who don't have anyone else coming for them. Nathan's voice was quiet, but fierce. I spent the last 3 months wondering why I survived when Jackson didn't. Wondering if there was any point to me being alive. And then Shadow found you in a blizzard, and you told me about people who needed help. He paused. Maybe this is the reason. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. Victoria studied him. The intensity in his eyes, the coiled energy in his body, the way he held himself like a weapon waiting to be fired. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. We could die. We could. Or we could save 3 lives and take down a monster. Nathan started walking again. I know which one I'd rather attempt. Shadow limped beside him, unquestioning. Victoria watched them for a moment, the broken seal and his wounded dog, walking toward danger like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she followed. The mine entrance was exactly where Victoria's maps had suggested. A rusted metal door set into the hillside, half hidden by overgrown brush and decades of neglect. The lock was ancient. Nathan had it open in 30 seconds. Stay behind me, he said. Shadow, guard. The dog positioned himself at the entrance, ears swiveling, nose working. Even injured, he was a better early warning system than any technology Nathan had ever used. They entered the tunnels. The darkness was absolute. Nathan pulled out a tactical flashlight, kept the beam low and focused. The tunnel stretched ahead of them, old mining infrastructure, converted decades ago into something more sinister. How far to the resort? Nathan whispered. About a mile. The main holding area is in a converted storage room. They kept the old ventilation system running. It's how they prevent detection. Guards? Usually 2, maybe more if Mercer's spooked. They moved carefully, silently, the way Nathan had moved through 100 hostile environments. Victoria matched his pace. She was good, he realized. Trained. The kind of agent who had survived undercover work, not through luck, but through skill. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Nathan stopped. Voices ahead. 2 distinct speakers. Male. He gestured to Victoria. She nodded, understanding. They crept forward until the voices became words. Should have heard from them by now. Storm probably delayed their signal. Webb said not to worry. Easy for Webb to say. He's not the one stuck down here with the merchandise. Hey, it beats being outside. You see that blizzard? I saw it. I also saw the look on the boss's face when that FBI bitch got away. Someone's going to pay for that. Not our problem. We just watch the girls until transport arrives. When's that happening? Tomorrow night. Mercer's got a plane coming in from Vancouver. Can't wait. These three are getting restless. The blonde keeps crying. They all cry. Doesn't change anything. Nathan felt Victoria's hand on his arm. Her grip was tight, fury contained by discipline. He leaned close to her ear. I'll take the one on the left. You take the right. Non-lethal, if possible. And if not possible, then we do what we have to do. They moved. Nathan came out of the darkness like a ghost. The guard on the left didn't even see him, just felt a hand close over his mouth and an arm wrap around his throat. 8 seconds of pressure, and the man went limp. Victoria's takedown was louder, but just as effective. Her guard tried to shout, got a forearm across his windpipe instead. He struggled. She held him until he stopped. 2 guards down, no shots fired. Nathan approached the metal door at the end of the chamber. Through a small window he could see them. 3 women, young, mid-20s at most, huddled together on mattresses that looked like they'd been used for decades. Their faces were hollow, haunted. The faces of people who had given up hope. Victoria appeared beside him. When she saw them, something broke in her expression. "Elena," she whispered. "The blonde one. I talked to her at the resort. She was working in housekeeping. She asked me if I knew a way to send money back to her family in Ukraine." "You can help her now." "I promised her. I promised I would help her get home." Nathan found the keys on one of the unconscious guards, unlocked the door. The women looked up. Terror flashed across their faces, then confusion as they saw Victoria. "It's okay," Victoria said, stepping into the room. "I'm FBI. We're here to get you out." "FBI?" The blonde woman, Elena, stared at her. "But you worked with us." "I was undercover. I was trying to find evidence to stop Mercer." Victoria crouched down, meeting Elena's eyes. "I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you had to wait. But it's over now." "Over?" Another woman spoke, dark-haired, with an accent Nathan couldn't place. "Nothing is ever over with these men. They will find us. They always find us." "Not this time." Nathan stepped forward. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe. FBI backup is coming. By tomorrow, Alexander Mercer will be in handcuffs." "How do we know we can trust you?" "You don't." Nathan met her eyes. "But you can stay here and wait for transport to Canada, or you can come with us and take a chance on freedom. Your choice." The women looked at each other. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Elena stood first. "We go with you." The others followed. Nathan led them back through the tunnel, Victoria bringing up the rear. The women moved slowly, malnourished, traumatized, unaccustomed to hope. But they moved. Shadow was waiting at the entrance, exactly where Nathan had left him. When he saw the women, his tail wagged gently. Elena stopped, stared at the dog. "He is hurt." "He was shot protecting someone." Nathan glanced at Victoria. "But he's still on duty." Elena crouched down, extended her hand. Shadow sniffed it, then licked her fingers. "Good dog," she whispered. For the first time since they found her, Elena smiled. They made it 200 yards before the shooting started. Nathan heard the first shot a half-second before it hit the tree beside his head. Training kicked in. He was already shouting for everyone to get down, already pushing the nearest woman behind cover. Contact front! Victoria, get them to the tree line! On it! More shots. Automatic fire now. Multiple shooters. Nathan returned fire, keeping his shots controlled, aimed at suppression rather than elimination. He didn't know how many enemies they faced. Didn't know their positions. Didn't know anything except that 3 terrified women were counting on him to keep them alive. Nathan, Victoria's voice. There's a ravine 50 meters east. Natural cover. Go, I'll hold them. That's suicide. Go. He heard Victoria moving, heard the women following, heard Shadow's paws on the frozen ground as he led them toward safety. Nathan stayed. The fire was intensifying. He counted muzzle flashes. 3 shooters, maybe 4, spread across a 50-meter front. Trained. Coordinated. Mercer's best. But Nathan had been fighting trained, coordinated enemies since before most of these men had held a gun. He moved. Low and fast, using the terrain, never staying in one place long enough to become a target. He fired when he had shots, retreated when he didn't, drew the attention away from the fleeing women. A bullet grazed his arm. He barely felt it. Another one took a chunk out of a tree, inches from his face. He definitely felt that. Cole! A voice from ahead. Webb's voice. Give it up. You're outgunned, outmanned, and out of time. Nathan didn't answer with words. He answered with a grenade. Not lethal, but loud. The explosion bought him 10 seconds. He used them to run. The ravine appeared in front of him like salvation. He threw himself over the edge, sliding down the icy slope, landing in a heap at the bottom. Victoria was there. Shadow was there. The 3 women were there, huddled together, shaking with cold and fear. You're hit, Victoria said. Flesh wound. You're bleeding a lot for a flesh wound. I've had worse. Nathan checked his weapon. Low on ammunition. Lower on options. How far to the main road? A mile, maybe less. Can they make it? He gestured at the women. They'll have to. Gunfire erupted above them. Webb and his men had reached the top of the ravine. Move, Nathan said. I'll cover you again. You'll die. Probably. He looked at her. But I didn't save you from a blizzard just to watch you get captured again. Go. Get them to safety. Call your handler the second you have signal. Nathan. That's an order, Agent Reyes. Victoria stared at him. Then she nodded once. Don't die. I'll do my best. She gathered the women, started moving down the ravine. Shadow hesitated, looking back at Nathan with those amber eyes that had seen so much. Go, boy. Protect them, Shadow whined. Go. The dog went. Nathan turned to face the enemy. 4 men were working their way down the slope. Webb was in the lead, his face twisted with rage. End of the line, Cole. Maybe, Nathan raised his weapon. But I'm taking at least one of you with me. You really want to die for women you don't even know? I want to do the right thing. If that means dying, then I guess I'm okay with that. Webb laughed. You're insane. Probably. Nathan fired. The first shot took Webb's man in the shoulder. The second went wide. The third, click, empty. Webb smiled. Like I said, end of the line. Nathan dropped his weapon, raised his hands. Any last words? Just one. Nathan's eyes moved past Webb to something over his shoulder. Duck. The helicopter came out of nowhere. FBI markings, tactical team already rappelling down. Gunfire erupting from above as federal agents engaged Mercer's men. Webb spun, startled. Nathan didn't hesitate. He tackled Webb, drove him into the frozen ground, fought for the weapon in the man's hands. They struggled. Webb was strong, trained, fueled by desperation. But Nathan had something Webb didn't. He had nothing left to lose. Nathan won. Webb went unconscious. And above him, as FBI agents secured the area and the nightmare finally ended, Nathan Cole lay in the snow and laughed. The FBI field hospital was chaos organized into efficiency. Nathan sat on a medical cot while a paramedic stitched the wound on his arm. The bullet had carved a 4-inch gash through his tricep. Painful, but not dangerous. He'd had worse in training exercises. Shadow lay at his feet, bandaged and sedated, his amber eyes half closed, but still tracking movement. The veterinarian the FBI had brought said he'd make a full recovery. 6 weeks of rest, maybe physical therapy. Shadow had responded to this diagnosis by trying to stand up and follow Nathan, which pretty much told the vet everything he needed to know about how well that advice would be followed. "You're lucky to be alive." Victoria appeared beside his cot. She had her own bandages, scrapes and bruises from the ravine descent, but she moved with the sharp energy of someone running on adrenaline and purpose. Lucky had nothing to do with it. Nathan winced as the paramedic pulled the suture tight. "Your backup arrived early." "Not early. On time." Victoria sat down on the adjacent cot. "I managed to reach my handler when we hit the tree line. The storm had broken enough for helicopter deployment. They were already in the air." "So when I was making my heroic last stand, you were being dramatic for no reason," Victoria almost smiled. "Very on brand for a SEAL. We prefer operationally theatrical." The paramedic finished and stepped away. Nathan flexed his arm, testing the wound. It hurt. He ignored it. "What's the situation?" 15 of Mercer's men in custody, including Webb. The 3 women from the tunnels are being debriefed by victim specialists. "Elena?" Victoria's voice caught. "Elena asked about you. Wanted to make sure you were okay." "And Mercer?" Victoria's expression darkened. "Gone." Nathan's hand stopped mid-motion. "What do you mean, gone?" "He wasn't at the resort when the raid happened. Left sometime during the night. His helicopter's missing. The pilot, too." "You're telling me we went through all that? The blizzard, the firefight, the tunnels, and the man responsible just walked away?" "I'm telling you, he has a 12-hour head start and access to resources we're still cataloging." Victoria's jaw tightened. "But I'm also telling you that we're not done." A new voice cut in. "Agent Reyes." They turned. A man approached, late 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with a close-cropped salt-and-pepper haircut and a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes held the tired weight of someone who had attended too many funerals in dark suits. "Special Agent in Charge, Thomas Redfield," Victoria said. "My handler." Redfield nodded to Nathan. "Commander Cole, I've heard a lot about you in the past 6 hours. Hopefully some of it was good." "Enough of it was remarkable." Redfield turned to Victoria. "We need to talk. Privately." "Anything you say to me, you can say in front of him. He saved my life. Twice." Redfield studied Nathan for a moment. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him. "Fine. We've got a problem. Beyond Mercer escaping? Connected to it." Redfield pulled out a tablet, handed it to Victoria. 30 minutes ago, we intercepted communications from a private airfield near the Canadian border. Flight plan filed for a small jet heading to Vancouver. "That's him." "Probably. But here's the complication." Redfield's voice dropped. "The airfield is owned by a company that traces back to Senator Gerald Morrison." Victoria's face went pale. "Morrison? He's one of our biggest supporters in Congress. Chairs the Oversight Committee for FBI operations." Redfield's expression was grim. "If Mercer has connections that reach that high, then we have a leak," Nathan said. Both agents turned to him. "Think about it. Mercer knew Agent Reyes was FBI before she could extract. His men knew exactly where to find my cabin. He had a 12-hour head start before the raid." Nathan met Redfield's eyes. "Someone told him what was coming. Someone with access to operational details. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation. Redfield was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I had the same thought, which is why I haven't reported Mercer's escape through normal channels. What do you mean? I mean that, officially, Alexander Mercer is still at large following a standard manhunt. Unofficially, Redfield looked at Victoria, I'm authorizing a parallel operation. Small team. Need-to-know basis. And I'm putting you in charge. Sir, you know Mercer better than anyone. You spent 3 months inside his organization. If anyone can predict where he's going and how to catch him, it's you. I'm also compromised. He knows my face. He'll see me coming. Which is why you won't be going alone. Redfield turned to Nathan. Commander Cole, how do you feel about temporary civilian consultant status? Nathan blinked. Excuse me? You're on medical leave. You have no official standing. But you also have 15 years of combat experience, a personal stake in seeing this through, and a dog who apparently has better instincts than half my field agents. Redfield's mouth twitched. I could use someone like that. You're asking me to help hunt down Alexander Mercer? I'm asking you to help Agent Reyes bring him to justice. Redfield paused. Within legal bounds, of course. This isn't an assassination. It's an arrest. Nathan looked at Victoria. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What do you think? He asked her. I think you almost died today because you couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. Victoria's voice was soft. I think you're the kind of person who finishes what he starts. And I think Mercer deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. Then we're in agreement. Nathan stood up. Shadow lifted his head, instantly alert despite the sedation. How soon do we leave? The drive north took 4 hours. Redfield had arranged a vehicle, an unmarked SUV with government plates that wouldn't attract attention. He'd also arranged credentials for Nathan that would hold up under casual scrutiny, along with enough firepower to handle most situations that might arise. You trust him? Nathan asked as they pulled onto the highway. Redfield? With my life. Victoria was driving, her hands steady on the wheel. He recruited me out of Quantico, trained me for undercover work. He's the reason I'm alive today. And yet, someone in the FBI is feeding information to Mercer. Someone, not Redfield. Victoria's voice was certain. If there's a leak, it's coming from somewhere else. Washington, maybe. Or Morrison's office directly. Senator Morrison. Tell me about him. Longtime congressman from Montana. Chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. Big supporter of law enforcement funding. Victoria paused. Also a big supporter of Alexander Mercer, now that I think about it. They've been photographed together at charity events. Morrison even gave a speech at the Silver Point Resort opening. So Mercer's been cultivating political protection for years. At least a decade, based on what I found in his files. Campaign contributions, speaking fees, family vacations at his properties, all technically legal, all designed to create obligations. And now Morrison owns an airfield that Mercer might be using to escape. Might be. We can't prove anything yet. Nathan watched the landscape slide past. Mountains giving way to foothills, snow-covered forests stretching to the horizon. Where exactly are we going? The airfield is near Whitefish. Small operation, mostly used for private charters and corporate flights. The kind of place where people don't ask too many questions. You think Mercer's still there? I think if he had a 12-hour head start, he could be anywhere by now. But I also think a man like Mercer doesn't run without his resources. Money, documents, contacts. He'd need to secure those before disappearing completely. So we're betting he hasn't left yet. We're betting that arrogance makes people predictable. Victoria's jaw tightened. Mercer has spent 30 years believing he's untouchable. Even now, Even with FBI raids and his men in custody, part of him probably thinks he can buy his way out of this. And if he can't, then we catch him trying. Shadow shifted in the back seat. His eyes were clearer now, the sedation wearing off, and his nose was working, processing the new scents outside the vehicle. "How's he doing?" Victoria asked. "Better than he should be." Nathan reached back, scratched behind Shadow's ears. "He's always been stubborn about recovery. Doesn't like being left out of the action. Sounds like someone else I know." "I have no idea what you're talking about." Victoria almost smiled. It changed her face, softened the hard edges, revealed the person underneath the agent. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "In the ravine, when you told me to run and said you'd cover us," she paused, "were you really willing to die?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "I spent 3 months in that cabin asking myself why I was still alive when Jackson wasn't. Wondering if there was any point to my existence. Waking up every night with his face in my dreams." He looked out the window. "And then Shadow found you, and suddenly there was something that needed doing, something that mattered." "That doesn't answer my question." "Yes," Nathan met her eyes. "I was willing to die, not because I wanted to, but because your life, those women's lives, mattered more to me in that moment than my own." "Why?" "Because that's what Jackson would have done. Because that's what he did do in Syria, when he threw himself between me and the blast." Nathan's voice caught. "I couldn't save him, but maybe I could save someone else. Maybe that would mean something." Victoria was silent for a while. "You know that's not how survivor's guilt works, right? Dying for strangers doesn't honor your friend's memory. Living does." "I know, intellectually. But knowing something and feeling it are different things." "Yeah," Victoria's voice softened. "They are." They drove in silence for several miles. "My sister disappeared when I was 17, Victoria said suddenly. Nathan turned to look at her. "Maria. She was 15. Came home from school one day, went to meet a friend, never came back." Victoria's hands tightened on the wheel. "Police said she was a runaway. Said girls like her, Latina, poor neighborhood, single mom, sometimes just vanished. But you didn't believe them. I knew Maria. She wouldn't run away. She was the responsible one. The one who was going to college. The one who was going to get our family out of the projects." Victoria's voice hardened. "Someone took her, and the system failed her because she wasn't important enough to matter." "Is that why you joined the FBI?" "It's why I specialize in trafficking cases. Every victim I save, every network I dismantle." She paused. "It won't bring Maria back. But maybe it stops someone else's sister from disappearing." Nathan understood now. The fire behind her eyes. The relentless determination. They were driven by the same thing, the need to give meaning to loss. "We're going to catch him," he said quietly. "I know. And when we do, I want to be the one who puts the handcuffs on." "Get in line." Victoria's jaw set. "I've been waiting 3 months for this." The airfield appeared as the sun began to set. A small collection of buildings clustered around a single runway. Private hangars. A control tower that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. The kind of place that existed specifically to avoid attention. "Park here," Victoria said. "We'll approach on foot." They left the SUV behind a stand of trees and moved toward the facility. Shadow walked between them, his limp barely noticeable now, his senses fully engaged. "How do you want to play this?" Nathan asked. "Carefully. We don't have backup, we don't have warrants, and we don't know what we're walking into." Victoria checked her weapon. "If Mercer is here, we identify his location and call it in. No heroics." You're taking all the fun out of this. I'm keeping us alive. They reached the perimeter fence. Nathan found a gap where the chain link had been cut and crudely repaired. The kind of modification that suggested regular, unauthorized access. Someone's been using this as a back door. Mercer's people, probably. Private airfield, friendly owner, minimal security. It's perfect for moving things you don't want inspected. They slipped through the gap and moved toward the hangars. The first two were empty. The third was locked from the inside. Nathan pressed his ear to the metal door. Voices, muffled but distinct. Told you, the plane isn't ready yet. Then make it ready. I need to be in Vancouver by midnight. Nathan recognized that voice. Smooth, cultured, accustomed to giving orders. Alexander Mercer. He gestured to Victoria. She nodded, understanding. They circled the hangar, looking for another entrance. Found a service door on the far side, also locked. But the mechanism was old and simple. Nathan had it open in under a minute. They slipped inside. The hangar was vast and mostly dark, illuminated only by work lights clustered around a small private jet in the center. 3 men stood near the aircraft, a pilot in uniform, a mechanic working on the engine, and Alexander Mercer himself. Mercer looked different than he had in Victoria's file photos. Tired, rumpled, the polish stripped away by 18 hours of running. But his voice still carried the authority of a man who expected to be obeyed. How much longer? Fuel line had a crack. I'm patching it now, but I don't want excuses. I want solutions. Sir, if we take off with compromised fuel systems, we could. I don't care about could. I care about will. Mercer's voice sharpened. In 4 hours, FBI agents will realize I'm not where they're looking. In 6 hours, they'll start checking private airfields. I need to be out of the country before that happens. Mr. Mercer, do your job, or I'll find someone who can. Nathan and Victoria had moved behind a stack of crates, close enough to hear clearly, far enough to remain unseen.
We could take him now, Nathan whispered. 3 against 2, and we don't know if there are others.
Shadow's not picking up anyone else. Victoria hesitated. She was weighing options, the opportunity against the risk, the certainty of capture against the possibility of failure. We wait, she decided. Let the mechanic finish. When Mercer's focused on boarding, he'll be vulnerable. Nathan nodded. It was sound, tactical thinking. They settled in to wait. 20 minutes passed. The mechanic completed his repairs. The pilot began running pre-flight checks. Mercer paced near the jet, checking his phone, making calls that went to voicemail. Morrison isn't answering, he muttered to no one in particular. Typical. Rats always know when to desert a sinking ship. Sir, the pilot called, we're ready for departure. Mercer straightened, adjusted his jacket. For a moment, he looked almost like the polished philanthropist he presented to the world. Finally, he walked toward the jet's stairs. Now. Victoria stepped out from behind the crates, weapon raised. Alexander Mercer, FBI! Don't move! Mercer froze. His face went through a rapid series of expressions. Surprise, fear, calculation, and finally something like resignation. Agent Reyes. His voice was calm. Too calm. I should have known you'd survive. Hands where I can see them. Mercer raised his hands slowly. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not putting you in handcuffs 3 months ago. You don't understand the forces you're dealing with. I have friends, powerful friends. One phone call and this whole investigation disappears. Your friends are running, Mercer. Morrison's not answering, remember? Victoria moved closer. Your empire is burning, and you're going to prison. Mercer's expression flickered. Then he smiled. Perhaps, but not tonight. He moved, faster than Nathan expected from a man in his 50s. His hand dove into his jacket, came out with a small pistol. Nathan was already running. He hit Mercer low, driving him away from Victoria, the gun discharging into the ceiling. They went down hard, Mercer's head cracking against the concrete floor. The pilot bolted for the hangar door. "Shadow!" The German Shepherd exploded into motion. Even injured, even limping, he was faster than any human. He caught the pilot at the door, dragged him down, pinned him with the weight of his body and the promise of his teeth. The mechanic had dropped to his knees, hands raised, clearly wanting no part of this. Nathan wrenched the pistol from Mercer's grip, pinned his arms behind his back. "Alexander Mercer, you're under arrest for human trafficking, attempted murder, and about 100 other charges I'm sure Agent Reyes will be happy to list." Mercer's face was pressed against the cold concrete. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. But his voice remained defiant. "This isn't over." "For you, it is." Victoria appeared with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you use it." The next 2 hours were a blur of procedure and protocol. Victoria called Redfield, who called in local agents, who secured the airfield and took custody of Mercer and his accomplices. The private jet was impounded. The hangar was sealed as a crime scene. And Alexander Mercer, billionaire philanthropist, pillar of society, monster in disguise, was loaded into the back of an FBI vehicle to await transport to federal custody. Nathan watched it happen from the edge of the runway, shadow pressed against his leg. "You did good, boy." He scratched behind the dog's ears. "We did good." Victoria approached, looking exhausted but triumphant. "It's over." "Is it?" "The main target is in custody. His network is being dismantled as we speak. The women from the tunnels are being connected with victim services. And the investigation is expanding to include Morrison and anyone else who enabled Mercer's operation."
So yes, it's over. The immediate crisis. Victoria stood beside him, looking at the lights of the FBI vehicles.
"The larger fight, that never ends."
"No, but today we won. Today we won." They stood in silence, watching as Mercer's vehicle pulled away, carrying a man who had trafficked human beings for decades, who had bought politicians and corrupted systems, who had believed himself untouchable. He had been wrong.
"What happens now?" Nathan asked. "Now I write reports. Lots of reports. Debrief with every agency that wants a piece of this case. Testify at hearings. Build the prosecution that puts Mercer away for life." Sounds exhausting. It is. Victoria turned to him. "What about you?" Nathan looked at Shadow, at the bandage on his shoulder, at the bullet wound on the dog's leg. "I guess I go back to the cabin, try to figure out what comes next." "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want." Nathan was honest. "For 3 months, I wanted to disappear. Then I found you in that blizzard, and suddenly, I had a mission again. Now the mission's over, and you're not sure who you are without one?" Something like that. Victoria reached into her pocket, pulled out a business card. "The FBI is forming a new task force. Trafficking cases that cross state lines, involve remote locations, require unconventional approaches." She handed him the card. "They need consultants, people with military backgrounds, combat experience, and dogs who can track scents through a Montana blizzard." Nathan looked at the card, then at Victoria. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a purpose." Her voice was soft. "You saved my life, Nathan. You saved 3 women who were about to disappear forever. You took on a monster, and you won." "I had help." "You had instincts, and a good heart, and a dog who wouldn't let you ignore what needed doing." Victoria met his eyes. "Those are rare things. They shouldn't be wasted in a cabin in the woods." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Jackson, about Syria, about the nightmares that still came every night. He thought about Shadow, who had walked into a blizzard because someone needed help. He thought about the women in the tunnels, whose faces would stay with him for the rest of his life. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." Nathan pocketed the card, reached down to scratch Shadow's ears. "Come on, boy. Let's go find somewhere to sleep that isn't a crime scene." Shadow's tail wagged. They walked toward the SUV, leaving behind the airfield and the FBI agents and the captured monster in handcuffs. But Nathan knew, somewhere deep in his gut, in the place where instinct lived, that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The federal courthouse stood like a monument to justice. Nathan had never felt comfortable in places like this. He understood battlefields. He understood missions. He understood the clarity of combat, where right and wrong were measured in survival and sacrifice. Courtrooms were different. Here, truth was a matter of argument. Justice was a matter of process. And monsters like Alexander Mercer could hire lawyers who made evil sound reasonable. "You okay?" Victoria appeared beside him, dressed in a dark suit that made her look every inch the federal agent she was. Her hair was pulled back in a tight knot, her expression composed, the face she wore for official business. "Just thinking. About whether this is going to work." Nathan looked at the courthouse doors. Mercer has money, connections, lawyers who'd never lost a case. What if nothing? Victoria's voice was firm. "We have evidence, testimony, witnesses who are willing to stand up and speak. That's more than most cases ever get." "And Morrison?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "The investigation is ongoing, but his staff is lawyering up. His allies are distancing themselves, and someone leaked documents to the Washington Post yesterday that trace his campaign finances directly to Mercer's shell companies. So he's done. Politically, yes. Criminally," she shrugged. "That depends on what the investigation turns up. But either way, his protection over Mercer is gone." Shadow pressed against Nathan's leg. The dog had healed remarkably over the past 6 weeks. The limp was barely noticeable now, and his energy had returned to pre-injury levels. But he still tracked Nathan's moods with those amber eyes, still sensed when his human needed comfort. "Ready?" Victoria asked. "Does it matter?" "No, but I'm asking anyway." Nathan took a breath. "Let's go put a monster in prison." The courtroom was packed. Media from every major outlet had descended on the case. The billionaire philanthropist, the trafficking network, the FBI agent who went undercover and nearly died. It was the kind of story that sold newspapers and generated clicks. Nathan sat in the gallery, Shadow at his feet. The dog had been granted special permission to attend. Redfield had pulled strings, citing his role in the rescue and the calming effect he had on the witnesses. The calming effect was real. Nathan had watched Elena approach the witness preparation room, trembling with anxiety, then visibly relax when Shadow trotted over and pressed his head against her knee. "He knows," Elena had said, scratching behind his ears. "He knows when people are afraid." "That's his job," Nathan had replied. "Being there when people need him." Now, sitting in the courtroom, Nathan watched as the prosecution laid out its case. The evidence was devastating. Bank records showing millions flowing through shell companies. Communication logs detailing the movement of victims. Testimony from former employees who had finally found the courage to speak. And photographs. God, the photographs. Of the tunnels beneath Silver Point Resort. The holding rooms. The evidence of lives traded like commodities. Mercer sat at the defense table, his face a mask of polished indifference. He was wearing a suit that cost more than most people earned in a month.
his silver hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating the confidence of a man who had never truly believed the rules applied to him. But Nathan saw what the cameras missed: the tightness around Mercer's eyes, the way his fingers occasionally drummed against the table, the subtle shift in his posture every time a new piece of evidence was introduced. He was scared. For probably the first time in his pampered life, Alexander Mercer was genuinely afraid. Good. Victoria took the stand on the fourth day. She wore the same dark suit, the same composed expression, but Nathan could see the tension beneath the surface. This was different from undercover work. There, she could hide behind a mask, become someone else. Here, she had to be herself, had to expose everything she had seen and done and felt. "Agent Reyes," the prosecutor began, "can you describe your role in the investigation of Alexander Mercer?" "I was assigned to infiltrate his organization under the cover identity of Victoria Santos, an event coordinator." Her voice was steady. "My objective was to gather evidence of human trafficking activities that previous investigations had failed to document." "And did you succeed?" "Yes and no." Victoria paused. "I gathered substantial evidence, photographs, financial records, witness testimony. But my cover was compromised before I could complete extraction." "Can you describe what happened when your cover was compromised?" Victoria's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the arms of her chair. "I was drugged and abducted from Silver Point Resort. Mr. Mercer's head of security, Marcus Webb, interrogated me briefly before transporting me to a location outside the property." She met Mercer's eyes across the courtroom. "I was then left in a blizzard to die." The courtroom stirred. Whispers shifted positions, the sound of people reacting to evil described in clinical terms. "And yet you survived." "I was found by a retired Navy SEAL and his K-9 partner, approximately 3 miles from where I was abandoned." Victoria's voice warmed slightly. "Commander Nathan Cole carried me through the worst storm Montana had seen in a decade. Without him, I would have died." "Objection!" Mercer's lawyer rose. "This testimony is inflammatory and irrelevant to the charges." "Overruled." The judge's voice was sharp. "The circumstances of Agent Reyes's survival are directly relevant to the attempted murder charges. Continue." Victoria continued. She described the cabin, the siege, the rescue of the women from the tunnels, the pursuit and capture of Mercer at the airfield. By the time she finished, the courtroom was silent. The defense attorney approached for cross-examination. "Agent Reyes, isn't it true that you developed a personal relationship with the man you claim rescued you?" "I don't understand the question." "Commander Cole, you've been seen together numerous times since the incident, sharing meals, attending events together." The lawyer smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "Some might say your testimony is influenced by personal feelings rather than professional objectivity." Victoria's expression didn't change. "Commander Cole saved my life. We've maintained a professional relationship since then. If the defense is suggesting that gratitude constitutes bias, I'd point out that every witness in this case has a reason to want justice served." She leaned forward slightly. "That doesn't make their testimony less true. You spent 3 months undercover, pretending to be someone you're not. How do we know you're not pretending now?" "Because I'm under oath. Because I've dedicated my career to stopping people like your client. And because somewhere in this country, a girl named Maria Reyes disappeared 15 years ago and was never found." Victoria's voice cracked, just slightly. "I don't know if your client took my sister, but I know he took someone else's. That's why I do this job. That's why I nearly died doing it. And that's why I'm telling the truth." The defense attorney had no further questions. The prosecution's strongest witness arrived on the 6th day. Elena Volkov walked into the courtroom like someone approaching an execution, her own or someone else's,
It wasn't clear. She was pale, thin, the shadows under her eyes speaking to sleepless nights and endless fear. But she walked. Nathan watched her approach the witness stand, watched Shadow's ears perk up at her scent, watched the slight straightening of her spine as she took her seat. She had asked to do this. The prosecutors had offered alternatives, video testimony, written statements, anything that would spare her the trauma of facing Mercer in person. Elena had refused. "He looked at me like I was nothing," she had told Victoria during preparation. "Like I was furniture, object, not human." Her voice had hardened. "I want him to see me as human. I want him to hear my voice. I want him to know that I survived and I am speaking, and nothing he can do will silence me again." The direct examination was brutal. Elena described her recruitment in Ukraine, the promise of legitimate work, the gradual realization that she was trapped, the conditions in the tunnels, the darkness, the cold, the other women who shared her prison. She described waiting to be shipped to Canada, waiting to disappear forever. And she described the moment the cell door opened and a man in a military uniform appeared with a limping German shepherd at his side. "What did you think when you saw them?" the prosecutor asked. "I thought it was a trick." Elena's voice trembled. "I thought they were new guards, new captors. I didn't believe anyone was coming to help us. I had stopped believing in help." "And when you realized it wasn't a trick?" Elena was quiet for a moment. Tears streamed down her face. "I thought maybe God was real after all. Maybe he had sent angels, one with a gun and one with 4 legs." The courtroom was silent. "Volkov, can you identify the man who orchestrated your captivity?" Elena looked at Mercer. Really looked, for the first time since entering the courtroom. "That man," she pointed. "Alexander Mercer. He came to the tunnels once, to inspect us, like we were merchandise." Her voice strengthened. "He looked at me and said, 'This one will sell well in Dubai.' Like I was not a person. Like I was a thing with a price tag." "Objection!" The defense attorney shot to his feet. "This is hearsay." It's first-hand testimony of what the witness heard directly from the defendant. The judge's voice was ice. "Overruled. Continue, Miss Volkov." Elena continued. She described the other women, their fears, their hopes, their gradual acceptance that they were never going home. She described the night they were rescued, the sounds of fighting, the door opening, the incredulous moment when freedom suddenly became possible. And she described Shadow. "The dog came to me first," she said, "before the man, before the FBI agent. The dog walked up to me and pressed his head against my knee." Her voice broke. "I had not been touched gently in weeks. I had forgotten what kindness felt like. And this dog, this beautiful, wounded dog, he reminded me." She looked toward the gallery, found Shadow, found Nathan. "That is why I am here today. Because a man and his dog walked into darkness to find us. Because they did not know us, but they came anyway." She turned back to the jury. "I will not let their courage be wasted. I will not let Mr. Mercer's lawyers make me silent again. I will speak, and I will keep speaking until justice is done." The defense attorney declined to cross-examine. Marcus Webb testified next. He had taken a plea deal, 25 years instead of life, in exchange for full cooperation. His testimony connected the dots that other witnesses could only suggest. The financial structures, the political protection, the network of corrupt officials and complicit businesses that had allowed Mercer's operation to flourish for decades. And most devastating of all, the names. 23 victims that Mercer had trafficked over the past 5 years alone. Some recovered, some still missing, some confirmed dead. 23 women who had been human beings with families and dreams and futures. 23 women who had been reduced to inventory in Alexander Mercer's ledgers. By the time Webb finished testifying, Mercer's polished indifference had cracked. His face was gray, his hands shook. The confidence was gone, replaced by the desperate calculation of a man who knew the walls were closing in. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. Nathan sat in the gallery, Shadow at his feet, Victoria beside him. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed in. 12 ordinary people who had spent 3 weeks listening to evidence of extraordinary evil. The foreperson stood. On the count of human trafficking, we find the defendant guilty. A sob from somewhere in the gallery. Elena, Nathan thought. On the count of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, we find the defendant guilty. More sounds, whispers, the rustle of people shifting in their seats. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Nathan felt Victoria's hand find his. She was shaking. The verdicts continued. Guilty on all counts. All 27 charges. Every crime that Alexander Mercer had thought himself above. When the foreperson finished, the judge turned to Mercer. The defendant will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Bailiffs? Mercer stood as officers approached. For a moment, he looked around the courtroom, at the cameras, the reporters, the witnesses who had spoken against him. His eyes found Nathan. Something passed between them, not words, not acknowledgement, just the silent recognition that one man had defeated another. Then Mercer was led away, and the courtroom erupted. Outside the courthouse, the media circus was in full swing. Nathan avoided the cameras, slipping out a side entrance with Shadow, while Victoria handled the press. She was good at it, articulate, composed, giving them exactly enough to make headlines without compromising ongoing investigations. He found a bench at the edge of the plaza and sat down heavily. Shadow jumped up beside him, which was against regulations for a working dog. But Nathan didn't care. He wrapped his arm around the German shepherd and held on. "We did it, boy." Shadow's tail wagged. "We actually did it." "Yes, you did." Nathan looked up. Elena stood a few feet away, dressed in new clothes that someone had helped her pick out, looking almost like the young woman she had been before Mercer's men had taken her. "May I sit?" "Of course." She settled onto the bench. Shadow immediately transferred his attention to her, resting his head on her knee. "He likes you," Nathan said. "I like him." Elena scratched behind Shadow's ears. "He was the first kind thing I remember from that night. Before I understood I was being rescued, before I knew I was safe, there was this dog, this wounded, beautiful dog, who looked at me like I mattered." "You do matter." "I know that now." Elena's voice was soft. "But in the tunnels, I had forgotten. Mr. Mercer and his men, they wanted us to forget. They wanted us to believe we were nothing." She looked at Nathan. "You and Shadow reminded me I was wrong. What will you do now?" "Go home. To Ukraine. My mother is still there. My grandmother." Elena smiled, a fragile expression, but real. "The FBI is helping with documents. They say I can leave in 2 weeks." "That's good." "Yes," Elena paused. "But first, I wanted to thank you. Properly. Not just words in a courtroom." "You don't have to. I want to." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A piece of paper, folded many times. "This is my grandmother's address, in Kyiv. If you ever come to Ukraine," Elena pressed it into his hand, "you will have a place to stay. A family to welcome you, for as long as you want." Nathan looked at the paper, at the neat handwriting, at the implicit trust it represented.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena stood, for not walking past, for carrying a stranger 3 miles through a blizzard, for believing that I was worth saving. She leaned down and kissed Shadow on the head. And thank you, beautiful dog, for knowing what I needed before I knew it myself. Then she walked away, toward the crowd, toward the cameras, toward the new life that awaited her. Nathan sat on the bench for a long time, holding the piece of paper, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Shadow stayed beside him, patient as always. Victoria found him an hour later. "I've been looking for you." "I was hiding." "Successfully." She sat down beside him. "The press wanted a statement from the mysterious Navy SEAL who rescued the FBI agent." "What did you tell them?" "That he was camera shy." Victoria smiled slightly. "Also, that his dog was the real hero." "That's accurate." They sat in comfortable silence. The plaza had mostly emptied. The reporters gone to file their stories. The spectators returned to their lives. "So what now?" Victoria asked. "Mercer's sentencing is next month. Morrison's investigation is ongoing. The task force is expanding to cover the other networks connected to Mercer's operation." She paused. "We have a lot of work ahead." "We?" Victoria reached into her jacket, pulled out a badge. "Your consultant credentials came through. Officially, you're a civilian advisor to the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force." She handed him the badge. "Unofficially, you're my partner." Nathan looked at the badge, at the weight of it in his hand, at what it represented. "I thought I wanted to disappear," he said slowly. "After Syria, after Jackson. I thought the only way to survive was to run away from everything that reminded me of what I'd lost." "And now?" "Now I think maybe the running was the problem." Nathan met her eyes. "Shadow didn't let me run past you in that blizzard. He stopped, and he waited, and he made me pay attention." "Maybe that's what I needed all along. Someone to stop me from running." "So you're accepting?" Nathan looked at Shadow. The dog looked back, amber eyes steady, tail wagging slowly. "Yeah," Nathan said. "I'm accepting." Victoria smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Not the professional mask, not the undercover persona, but the real woman underneath. "Good, because we have a briefing at 8 a.m. Monday, and you're buying coffee." "I am?" "Partner privilege." She stood. "See you Monday, Commander Cole." "See you Monday, Agent Reyes." She walked away. Nathan watched her go. This woman who had survived 3 months undercover, a kidnapping, a blizzard, and a firefight, who had testified against a monster and helped put him in prison, who had offered Nathan something he hadn't known he was looking for. Purpose. "Come on, boy," he said to Shadow. "Let's go home." Shadow jumped off the bench, ready for whatever came next. They walked into the gathering darkness together. 2 survivors, 2 partners. 2 souls who had found each other in a Montana blizzard and emerged stronger for it. The nightmares would still come. Nathan knew that. Jackson's face would still haunt him. The guilt would still whisper in quiet moments. But now, when the darkness pressed in, he had something to push back against it. A mission. A partner. A dog who refused to let him give up. And that, Nathan realized, was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. 6 months passed like water through fingers. Nathan stood at the window of the FBI field office in Seattle, watching the rain streak down the glass. Shadow lay at his feet, muzzle resting on crossed paws, amber eyes half closed in the comfortable drowse of a dog who had learned that some days were for waiting. "You're brooding again." Victoria appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. She passed one to Nathan without asking if he wanted it. After 6 months of partnership,
She knew his rhythms as well as he knew hers. "I'm thinking. Same thing with you." Nathan accepted the coffee. "Sentencing hearing is tomorrow." "I know." "Mercer's lawyers filed another appeal, claiming prosecutorial misconduct." "I know that, too." Victoria sipped her coffee. "It won't work. The evidence is overwhelming. The testimony is solid, and Judge Harrison has denied every motion they've filed." But nothing. Victoria met his eyes. "Alexander Mercer is going to prison for the rest of his life. Tomorrow, we'll hear the judge say it officially, and then it's done." "Is it?" "The case? Yes." Victoria paused. "The work? Never." Nathan thought about the past 6 months. The task force had expanded beyond anything he'd imagined. Investigations in 12 states. Connections to trafficking networks across 3 continents. Victims recovered who had been missing for years. And at the center of it all, a wounded seal and his dog, who had stumbled into something much bigger than themselves. "Elena called this morning," Victoria said. "How is she?" "Good. Better than good, actually. She started a nonprofit in Kiev, helping trafficking survivors reintegrate into society. Housing, job training, counseling." Victoria smiled slightly. She named it Shadow's Light. Nathan felt something warm spread through his chest. She didn't have to do that. She wanted to. She said your dog showed her that kindness still existed in the world. She wants to pay that forward. Shadow's ears perked up at his name. His tail thumped once against the floor. "Good boy," Nathan murmured, "making a difference without even trying." "Just like his handler." Nathan shook his head. "I'm not." "You are." Victoria's voice was firm. "6 months ago, you were hiding in a cabin in Montana, waiting to disappear. Now you're leading field operations, training new agents, consulting on cases that would have gone cold without your expertise." She touched his arm. "You matter, Nathan. What you do matters." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. "Morrison's trial starts next month." "I heard. Federal corruption charges, money laundering, conspiracy." Victoria's jaw tightened. "He won't serve as much time as Mercer, but his career is over. His legacy is destroyed. Everyone who protected him is scrambling to distance themselves." "You think he'll flip? Give up more names?" "I think men like Morrison only think about themselves. If cooperating gets him a lighter sentence, he'll sell out anyone." Victoria set down her coffee. "But that's not our problem. We caught the monster. The rest is cleanup." Shadow rose to his feet, stretching with the languor of a dog who had fully recovered from his injuries. The bullet wound had healed completely. No limp, no stiffness. Nothing but a small scar hidden beneath his tan and black coat. "Ready to go home?" Nathan asked. Shadow's tail wagged. "I'll see you tomorrow," Victoria said. "Early. The hearing starts at 9. "I'll be there." "Bring Shadow. Elena is flying in to give a victim impact statement." She asked specifically if he could be there. "For support?" "For courage," Victoria smiled. "She says he gives her courage just by existing." Nathan looked at his dog. 6 years of partnership, 3 combat tours, 1 Montana blizzard, and now this. A new mission, a new purpose, a new reason to keep moving forward. "Yeah," he said quietly. "He does that." The night before the sentencing, Nathan couldn't sleep. It wasn't the nightmares this time. Those had faded, slowly but steadily, over the past months. Therapy helped. So did work. So did Shadow, who still slept at the foot of Nathan's bed, and still woke him when the dreams turned dark. Tonight, it was something else. Something that felt like anticipation, or maybe resolution. The sense that a chapter was ending, and he needed to be present for every word of the final page.
He got up, pulled on jeans and a jacket, whistled softly for Shadow. "Come on, boy, let's walk." They stepped into the night. Seattle was quiet at this hour, the streets empty, the city holding its breath between midnight and dawn. Nathan walked without destination, letting his feet carry him while his mind wandered. He thought about Jackson. Not the way he used to, with guilt and grief and the crushing weight of failure. Now he thought about his friend with something closer to peace. Sadness, yes, always sadness, but also gratitude for the years they'd had. Pride in the man Jackson had been. Hope that somewhere, somehow, Jackson would be proud of what Nathan had become. "I'm still here," Nathan said aloud, to the night, to the memory, to whatever part of Jackson might be listening. "I'm still fighting. Not the same fight, but a fight that matters." Shadow pressed against his leg. "I know you'd understand. You always did. You threw yourself between me and that blast because that's who you were. Someone who ran toward danger instead of away from it." Nathan's voice caught. "I'm trying to be that person now. I'm trying to honor what you taught me." The wind stirred. A car passed in the distance. The city breathed. "I found people who need me," Nathan continued. "Women who were going to disappear. An agent who almost froze to death. A dog who refuses to let me give up." He smiled slightly. "You'd like Victoria. She's stubborn as hell. Reminds me of you." Shadow whined softly. "And you'd love Shadow. He's not as young as the dogs we worked with overseas, and he's got his scars, but he's still the best partner I've ever had." Nathan scratched behind the dog's ears. Present company accepted, of course. They walked for another hour, through empty streets and quiet neighborhoods, past closed shops and sleeping houses. When they finally returned to Nathan's apartment, something had settled inside him. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But it no longer owned him. The courthouse was packed. Nathan had seen media circuses before, but this one was different. Every major network had sent crews. Protesters gathered outside with signs demanding justice. Survivors and advocates filled the gallery, their presence a silent testimony to the scale of Mercer's crimes. Nathan found a seat near the back, Shadow lying at his feet. Victoria was already at the prosecution table, conferring with the lead attorney. Redfield sat in the first row of the gallery, his face set in the grim expression of a man who had waited years for this moment. And then there was Elena. She sat 3 rows ahead of Nathan, wearing a simple blue dress and clutching the hand of a woman who looked enough like her to be family. Her grandmother, Nathan realized. The one she had mentioned months ago. The one she had thought she might never see again. Elena must have felt his gaze. She turned, found him, smiled. Then she saw Shadow, and her smile grew wider. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Nathan nodded. A bailiff called for order. The room quieted. Judge Harrison entered, and then, in handcuffs and prison orange, Alexander Mercer was led into the courtroom. He looked smaller than Nathan remembered. The silver hair that had once gleamed with expensive styling products was now lank and gray. The confident posture had collapsed into something hunched and defeated. The eyes that had assessed human beings like merchandise now darted around the room with barely concealed fear. 6 months of prison awaiting trial had done what decades of privilege could not. They had stripped away every layer of Mercer's carefully constructed image, revealing the pathetic creature underneath. "The defendant will rise," Judge Harrison said. Mercer stood. His lawyer stood beside him. "Alexander James Mercer, you have been found guilty of 27 counts, including human trafficking, conspiracy, attempted murder, and money laundering." The judge's voice was cold and measured. "Before I pronounce sentence, I will hear victim impact statements.
Ms. Volkov? Elena rose. Her grandmother squeezed her hand one last time, then let go. Elena walked to the front of the courtroom. Her hands were shaking, Nathan could see. But her jaw was set, and her eyes were clear.
I wrote a speech, she said. Many pages, many words. But standing here now, looking at the man who tried to turn me into property, I find that most of those words no longer matter. She turned to face Mercer directly. You took me from my home. You locked me in darkness. You told me I would never see my family again. Her voice strengthened. You made me believe I was nothing, that I existed only to be sold, that my life had no value beyond what someone would pay for it. Mercer looked away. Elena didn't let him. Look at me. Her voice cracked like a whip. You looked at me in that tunnel and decided my worth. Now you will look at me and see what I have become. Mercer's eyes returned to her. Something in them. Shame? Fear? Nathan couldn't tell. I am not nothing. I am Elena Volkov. I am a daughter, a granddaughter, a survivor. Elena's voice rose. I am the founder of Shadow's Light, a nonprofit that has already helped 47 women escape trafficking situations. I am a speaker who has addressed 3 international conferences on survivor advocacy. I am a voice that will not be silenced. She stepped closer to Mercer. You thought you could erase me. You thought you could make me disappear. But I am still here. I am standing in front of you, in a court of law, watching justice be done. Her eyes blazed. And when you are gone, when you are rotting in prison for the rest of your miserable life, I will still be here, speaking, fighting, helping others escape the darkness you tried to trap me in. Elena turned to face the gallery, found Nathan, found Shadow. I survived because of 2 heroes, a man and his dog, who walked into a blizzard to find me, who fought through armed men to rescue me, who reminded me that goodness exists in a world that sometimes seems consumed by evil. Her voice softened. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of their courage. She returned to her seat. Her grandmother embraced her. The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Thank you, Ms. Volkov. He turned to Mercer. The defendant may speak, if he wishes. Mercer's lawyer leaned in, whispered something. Mercer shook his head. I have nothing to say, he muttered. Very well. Judge Harrison's expression hardened. Alexander James Mercer, I have presided over criminal trials for 32 years. I have sentenced murderers, rapists, terrorists. I have seen the worst that humanity has to offer. He paused. But I have rarely seen evil so calculated, so sustained, so utterly devoid of remorse as what you have perpetrated. You are a predator who disguised himself as a philanthropist, a monster who hid behind charity galas and hospital donations while trafficking human beings for profit. The judge's voice rose. You have shown no contrition. You have offered no apology. You have attempted to use your wealth and connections to escape justice at every turn. And so I will ensure that justice finds you with the full weight of the law. He opened a folder. On the count of human trafficking, I sentence you to 40 years in federal prison. On the count of conspiracy to commit human trafficking, I sentence you to 20 years to be served consecutively. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years to be served consecutively. The numbers kept coming, count after count, year after year. When Judge Harrison finished, the total was 147 years. You will die in prison, Mr. Mercer. That is the consequence of your choices. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. The gavel fell. Mercer swayed. His lawyer caught his arm, and in the gallery, someone began to applaud. Then another person, and another. Within seconds, the entire courtroom was on its feet, clapping, crying, releasing years of fear and grief and desperate hope in a thunderous ovation of justice. Nathan didn't clap. He just watched. Watched as Mercer was led away in handcuffs. Watched as Elena embraced her grandmother. Watched as Victoria turned toward him with tears streaming down her face and a smile that lit up the room. Shadow pressed against his leg. "We did it, boy," Nathan whispered. "We actually did it." The celebration afterward was overwhelming. Media wanting statements, survivors wanting to share their stories, advocates wanting to thank Victoria and Nathan and anyone else who had contributed to bringing Mercer down. Nathan escaped as soon as he could, slipping out a side door with Shadow and finding a quiet bench in the courthouse garden. He sat there for a long time, watching the afternoon sun filter through the clouds. Hiding again? Elena appeared beside him. She looked lighter than he had ever seen her. The weight of fear finally lifted from her shoulders. "Taking a break." "May I join you?" "Please." She sat down. Shadow immediately moved to rest his head on her knee. "Hello, beautiful boy." Elena scratched behind his ears. "I told everyone about you in my speech. I hope you don't mind." Shadow's tail wagged. "He's proud of you," Nathan said. "I'm proud of him." Elena looked at Nathan. "And of you." "I just did what needed to be done." "You say that like it was nothing. Like walking into a blizzard to find a stranger is something anyone would do." Elena shook her head. "It's not. Most people would have stayed inside. Most people would have convinced themselves it wasn't their problem. You didn't. Shadow didn't give me a choice. Shadow gave you an excuse. The choice was yours." Elena smiled slightly. "My grandmother has a saying, God sends angels in unexpected forms. Sometimes they have wings. Sometimes they have 4 legs. Sometimes they wear military uniforms and pretend they're not heroes." "I'm not—" "You are." Elena's voice was gentle, but certain. "You saved my life. You saved the lives of everyone who was trapped in those tunnels. And because of that, 47 more women have been rescued by Shadow's light." She leaned forward. "That's not nothing, Nathan. That's everything." Nathan didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that felt true. "I'm glad you're okay." "I'm more than okay. I'm alive. I'm free. I'm doing work that matters." Elena stood. "And whenever I doubt myself, whenever the fear tries to come back, I think about you and Shadow walking through that blizzard. I think about the door opening and seeing 2 figures who shouldn't have been there, but were." She leaned down and kissed Shadow on the head. "Take care of him," she told the dog. "He needs you." Shadow's tail wagged harder. Then Elena walked away, toward her grandmother, toward the new life that waited for her. Victoria found Nathan an hour later. The garden had emptied. The sun was setting. Shadow had fallen asleep with his head on Nathan's lap. "I've been looking for you." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because you keep disappearing." Victoria sat beside him. "You know, for someone who's become essential to this task force, you're remarkably bad at accepting praise." "I'm working on it." "Work harder." But her voice was gentle. "We did something good today, Nathan. Something that matters. Try to let yourself feel that." Nathan looked at Shadow, at the dog who had led him through a blizzard, who had taken a bullet protecting Victoria, who had given Elena the courage to testify. "I feel it," he said quietly. "I just don't know what to do with it." "You keep going." Victoria leaned back. "That's all any of us can do. Keep going, keep fighting, keep believing that what we do makes a difference." "Does it?" Ask Elena. Ask the 47 women her organization has helped. Ask the victims who are sleeping safely tonight because we took Mercer off the streets. Victoria met his eyes. "It matters, Nathan. You matter."
They sat in silence as the sun sank lower. "I had a sister," Victoria said suddenly. "Maria. She disappeared 15 years ago." "You told me." "I never told you how it ended." Victoria's voice was soft. 6 weeks ago, I got a call from an agent in Texas. They'd identified remains found near the border. DNA matched Maria's."
Nathan's heart clenched. Victoria, she was trafficked, like Elena, like the women we found in Mercer's tunnels. Victoria's eyes glistened. She was 18 years old. She wanted to be a doctor, and she died somewhere in the desert, alone and afraid and forgotten. "I'm so sorry." "I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because—" Victoria's voice broke. "Because I spent 15 years searching for her, praying she was alive, hoping I'd find her working at a cafe in some foreign city, living under a different name. And now you know." "Now I know." Victoria wiped her eyes. "And instead of destroying me, it's freed me. I can finally stop searching. I can finally let her go. I can finally channel all that grief into something useful." She turned to face him. "That's why I do this job, Nathan. Not for justice in the abstract. For Maria. For every Maria who never came home. For every family that's still waiting, still hoping, still praying for a miracle that may never come." Nathan understood now. The fire behind her eyes, the relentless determination, the refusal to ever give up. They were the same. "We make a good team," he said. "We do," Victoria smiled through her tears. "Broken people finding purpose in helping other broken people. It's not pretty, but it works." Shadow stirred, lifting his head, looking between them with those knowing amber eyes. "He agrees," Nathan said. "He's a wise dog. The wisest." They sat together as the last light faded. Two survivors. Two fighters. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and emerged stronger for it. 1 year later. Nathan stood at the edge of a Montana meadow, watching Shadow run through the tall grass. The German shepherd moved with the joy of a creature fully alive, no longer limping, no longer wounded. Just pure canine happiness expressed through motion. "He looks good." Victoria appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. The offering had become a ritual between them, a small gesture that meant more than either would admit. "He is good." Nathan accepted the coffee. "We both are." "The cabin looks different." It did. Nathan had spent the past year rebuilding what had been destroyed in the siege. New windows, reinforced doors, upgraded security. But he'd also added things. A garden that reminded him of his mother's. A workshop where he could work with his hands when thinking became too much. A second bedroom for guests who sometimes needed a place to disappear. "I figured if I was going to keep coming back here, I might as well make it comfortable." "Keep coming back?" "Between assignments, when I need to remember who I am outside the mission." Nathan looked at her. "You should try it sometime, taking a break." "I'll add it to my list." But Victoria smiled. "The task force is expanding again. 12 new field agents, a dedicated canine unit, funding that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago." Mercer's conviction helped. "So did yours." Victoria turned to face him. "The work you've done, Nathan. The cases you've consulted on. The training protocols you've developed. You've changed how we approach trafficking investigations. I had good teachers. You had good instincts. The teachers just pointed you in the right direction." Shadow bounded back toward them, tongue lolling, tail wagging. He dropped a stick at Nathan's feet and looked up expectantly. "Really?" Nathan laughed. "After all the sophisticated training you've had, you want to play fetch?" Shadow's tail wagged harder. "Some things transcend training," Victoria observed. Nathan threw the stick. Shadow exploded after it with the enthusiasm of a puppy. "I've been thinking.
Nathan said. About? About what comes next, after this assignment ends, after the task force stabilizes. You're not thinking of leaving? I'm thinking about what it means to stay. Nathan watched Shadow retrieve the stick and race back toward them. For 15 years, I defined myself by service, by missions, by being useful to something larger than myself. And then Syria happened, and I thought that definition was over. But Shadow found you in a blizzard, and you gave me a new definition. Nathan met her eyes. I'm not just a SEAL anymore. I'm not just a consultant. I'm someone who saves people. Someone who fights for victims who can't fight for themselves. Someone who... He stopped. The words felt too big for the moment. Someone who matters, Victoria finished for him. Someone whose life has meaning beyond survival. Yeah, Nathan's voice was rough. That. Shadow returned with the stick. Nathan threw it again. I've been thinking too, Victoria said. About? About partnership. About what it means to work with someone you trust completely. She paused. About what it might mean to build something together that goes beyond professional obligation. Nathan's heart rate increased. Victoria, I'm not proposing anything dramatic. I'm just saying, she took a breath, I'm saying that the past year has been the best year of my career, that I trust you more than I've trusted anyone since Maria disappeared, that when I imagine the future, you're in it. As a partner? As whatever we become. Victoria smiled slightly. I'm not good at this, at vulnerability, at letting people in. But you walked through a blizzard to save a stranger, and you've been walking beside me ever since. That means something. Shadow returned again. This time, he didn't drop the stick at Nathan's feet. He pressed his body between them, looking up with those amber eyes that seemed to understand everything. I think he's trying to tell us something, Victoria said. He usually is. Nathan looked at his dog, at the woman beside him, at the meadow that had witnessed so much pain, and was now witnessing something that felt like hope. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Whatever this becomes, whatever challenges come next, I'm here. Shadow's here. We're not running anymore. Neither am I. They stood together as Shadow finally dropped the stick and settled at their feet. The Montana sky stretched endless above them, blue and gold and promising. Somewhere in the world, evil still existed. Monsters still preyed on the innocent. Victims still needed saving. But here, in this moment, there was peace. There was purpose. There was love. Sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. This is the truth that Victoria Reyes learned in a blizzard that should have killed her. That Nathan Cole discovered when a dog refused to let him walk past someone who needed help. That Elena Volkov found when a cell door opened and freedom appeared in the form of a limping German shepherd and a broken Navy SEAL. Evil depends on isolation. It depends on silence. It depends on good people believing they are powerless. But we are not powerless. Every choice matters. Every voice counts. Every act of courage, no matter how small, pushes back against the darkness. The man in this story didn't set out to be a hero. He was wounded, grieving, ready to disappear. But he followed his dog into a storm, and that decision changed everything. The woman in this story spent years hunting monsters while carrying her own private grief. But she kept fighting, kept believing, kept refusing to accept that evil would win. And the dog, the beautiful, stubborn, wounded dog who started it all, he simply did what loyal creatures do. He noticed when something was wrong. He refused to look away. He led his human toward the person who needed saving. That's the lesson. Don't look away. Don't walk past. Don't convince yourself that someone else will handle it. Be the person who stops. Be the voice that speaks. Be the light that refuses to go out when darkness seems overwhelming.
Because somewhere, right now, someone is waiting for rescue. Someone is praying for help. Someone is losing hope and needs to be reminded that goodness still exists. You could be that reminder. You could be someone's miracle. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope. Comment your city and your pet's name. Subscribe so you never miss another story that reminds us what courage looks like. And may God bless you with the strength to stand when standing is hard. May He give you the wisdom to see when seeing hurts. May He place the right people in your path when you need them most. And may He make you the right person for someone else. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder and angels. Sometimes they arrive on four paws, leading a broken soldier through a blizzard toward a stranger who was never meant to die alone. That is grace. That is hope. That is the truth that changes everything.